We are back with another episode of Boots, Balls and Bras with myself, Fara Williams, and the amazing Anita Asante, live in studio. We had to get in before Christmas.
Buzzing to be back.
Of course we are. Before we get into the weekend's football, tell me what you've been up to. You've just got back from the 23s, right?
Yeah, just got back from our camp. Was in Norway, played them, played Sweden. Got a few new faces into the group as well. Got to work on loads of things, to set the foundations heading into the Christmas break, stuff we can keep improving on into the new year. So excited about that. And I thought it would be freezing Baltic out there. And then we had Storm Dara here.
I know, mate.
And
how bad
honestly,
is that? Cold. I saw
that
you.
was
I actually saw you yesterday with your big puffer, freezing. I was thinking, I feel for her. Pitch side at West Ham.
Never have I ever wanted to be on a beach more than I did yesterday in the sunshine.
You look cold. Anyone to kind of keep an eye on in the 23s that might sneak into the Euros next year? Any insights you can give? Let the fans look out for in this next 5-6 month period?
Well, I think obviously the seniors played Switzerland and obviously USA, and they had a few of our 23s called up into that group. So like Laura Blinkilde-Brown, Ruby Mace, Jess Naz is obviously there, Aggie Beaver-Jones. Don't want to miss anyone, but, quite a few of them, which is a great experience for them to get in that training environment. I think, ones to potentially look out for Laura Blinkilde-Brown. Yeah. I think
hopefully she gets more minutes.
She needs more minutes at club, but has shown, I think, a really good account of herself. I think they all did, but she's a really tidy ball player in those tight spaces, and hopefully we do see some of those faces come the Euros next summer.
They did well. I mean, it was a young squad, wasn't it, that played, and it was a nice experience for them. And against tough opposition, obviously Switzerland are going to host. But Neats, man, I was at Wembley on Thursday. I am still recovering today. I played in an FA partners game, so all the sponsors of the FA and the England teams were there to kind of, play at Wembley. Oh my days! Why did I try and play 25 minutes? I better stop doing my punditry and criticising players that can't move. When we used to play and we're like, just put the ball into the space or safe side. But it got to the point where I was like, just give it to my feet because I can't stretch left or right.
Put it on your feet.
Still recovering today, so I'm hurting a little bit. But
but you know what? You're braver than me because there's no way
hurting.
I'd be able to do that.
Every part of me's hurting. I can't even tell you a part of me that ain't hurting. I've got blisters on my toe. You name it, I had it. So yes, I'm happily retired. I have to say, it was horrible. But let's talk about the weekend. Arsenal, big win at the Emirates, 4-0 against Aston Villa. But Renée Slegers has been given the job at least until Christmas. So we know that's another game, and obviously a Champions League game before the Christmas break. Why do you think they haven't given her the job? Given the results, she's won 7 in 8.
Yeah. I honestly think that the club might be wanting someone, readily established, kind of in terms of long-term experience, who they think has the sort of credibility in the international, in the football community to maybe take on that role, and probably has that Champions League experience and all of that sort of thing. Maybe they're looking for that kind of CV or profile to sort of, look forward to the future. But in my opinion, I feel that she personally has done enough to warrant having the job. And I'll put my neck on the line and say that, because I think at the end of the day, it's a results business, and it's also about performances and the manner of which the players are playing. And from what I can see, the players look happy. They are scoring more goals, which was an issue prior to her taking charge.
Well, just on that, they've scored 24 since she's taken charge and only conceded 2. So that obviously
I think that
highlights
speaks
what you're saying there.
I think it speaks volumes, and ultimately she's getting, 7 out of 8 wins.
One draw in
that.
So she hasn't lost as manager.
I think it's really impressive when you think about the Arsenal that we were talking about a few months ago that looked nowhere near it, off pace, were chasing everything, and now are firing. I'm seeing a confident Russo again, back to scoring ways. Beth Mead is back. The team look cohesive. They look like they understand what they're trying to do. They look confident. They look like an Arsenal that can dominate games in the way that an Arsenal team should.
You know what's interesting, right? You look at, and I hate comparing the two, but I'm just doing it as a club because Arsenal like to be seen as one club, men's and women's, but as under one umbrella, right? They employed Mikel Arteta, who, as a CV, he didn't have anything on it in terms of managing, in terms of bringing success. And they're expecting him to win the Premier League and obviously compete in the Champions League. They've took that risk with Arteta, and we've seen the success in terms of like the consistent performances Arsenal men have shown over the last 3 years under him. It took him a bit of time. Now, what's the difference in giving Renée Slegers a job and go, here's a 2-year contract, this is what we expect, you need to qualify for the Champions League, that's a given, and you need to get closer to the likes of Chelsea and Man City again, which is going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Why do you think that, you know, if you compare the two and you look at the club under an umbrella, which they are, and they like to be seen as one, why wouldn't they take that risk with Renée Slegers? Yes, she's not got senior experience, but she's worked under some really good managers as an assistant coach. She's played the game at the top level, international level, played for Holland, retired through injury. So she's been there and done it in terms of that. She was in obviously the Euro team for the Netherlands. So why wouldn't they take that risk with her?
Well, I think you make a very good point. What is the difference? You know, Arteta was relatively young in his managerial experience, and going into that role has taken Arsenal, you know, the men's team, finishing second in the Premier League. That took time to get there. I don't know why. I can't answer that question for them. But my thing is, trust her. Put some, you know, invest in her. Put some confidence to back her, because I think she can deliver. Yeah. I think, you know, I've been really impressed with her press conferences, the way she speaks to, you know, the press and the media and to the fans, and her acknowledgement of how they support the players and the feelings she has. And she's got a sort of quiet confidence, you know, and I think, right, she's calm, but she seems like she believes in what she's doing. And ultimately, like I said, this is an Arsenal team that we are enjoying watching again. And for the fans, that's what they want to see, ultimately. So I just think, you know, we talk about not having enough female coaches at the highest level. You know, everybody needs their first opportunity to rise to the top, to have to progress in their own sort of career. And why not? I just think for me, I think she's done fantastic.
She has. And you know what? So, like sometimes, of course, when you're an assistant coach and then stepping into that role as head coach, I understand can be quite difficult in terms of that player to coach respect, because obviously you build up a different rapport with your assistant coach to your manager. You know, you could be more pally. I know that, you know, assistant coaches that I've worked with, you have that different relationship with them, a more nicer, more softer approach, because ultimately as players, we don't think that the assistant coach has any impact on the starting 11, right? So I get that you could think that. But I actually think in terms of that respect level and in terms of the delivery and what you're getting from the players, in terms of the work rate, all of those things that you would question under a manager, she seems to be getting out of these players that Jonas Eidevall, towards the end of his reign at Arsenal, wasn't able to get. So from a board point of view, looking in on her, they've got to be thinking, look at what these players are giving for her. And for me, as somebody that will then be employing, I mean, when you look at names that are out there, there was... what was the City coach that there was
Nick Cushing.
Nick Cushing, that got wrote off quite quickly. He said he's staying out in America to continue his coaching out there. You've got Casey, who's not currently unemployed in terms of management, but I can't think of any top name coaches in the women's game that are out there that Arsenal could look at and go, they're going to do a better job than Renée Slegers is already doing at Arsenal currently.
I agree. I think all the kind of profiled managers out there are already in jobs at good clubs, and they seem settled in that. So it probably take a lot to prize them out of their current roles to come to Arsenal. But going back to your previous point, I think in terms of Renée being an assistant transitioning into a head coach, she has got credit in the bank with the players, because she's managed to build that trust between herself and the players. And I think the respect... And
during a difficult time.
Exactly.
So that difficult time that they had with Jonas, she would have been there for the players as an assistant coach. She would have been kind of the person that the players would have spoke to about, you know, difficulties or uncomfortable conversations that players probably wouldn't have wanted to have with Jonas. So she kind of would have got, I don't know, a heads up in terms of how they're feeling. So then taking a managerial role, she would have understood actually the players didn't like this approach. They didn't You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
need to approach it differently. She would have got a lot of that as the assistant during her period there.
I think it's a very valid point that you make, Farah. And I think also at the end of the day, you know, she is stepping into this role. And yes, arguably she doesn't have the same pressure because they're already chasing the title contenders in terms of Man City and Chelsea to begin with. But I don't see, I wonder what you think about this. As time progresses, if they continue in this way where they're doing well and pressure gets, higher, the stakes are higher, having someone that supports her within her backroom staff that isn't necessarily taking on her role as a head coach, but to just help her deal with expectation and pressure. Do you know what I mean? Like either through a psychologist or a mentor that is maybe not even related to football specifically, but someone that she also has as a sounding board. Do you know what I mean? To help her as she's within this role at the same time.
It wouldn't surprise me if she had that already in terms of, as players, you use psychologists, right? So you use tools that help you through those pressured moments or difficult periods. Managers tend not to use that, probably haven't used that. So it wouldn't surprise me if she was a manager that using her playing experiences might use those in a managerial. In terms of, yes, I've got my backroom staff that are really supportive, but actually outside of that, I need somebody that doesn't know too much about what's going on and I can kind of offload. It wouldn't surprise me. And managers need support.
Definitely.
We never speak about the support and pressures that managers have. We only ever speak about the pressures that players have. Of course you would need that. The club would have to think about that. But I'm just really surprised, 8 games in, unbeaten, that they haven't considered giving her the job at this point. There's not many games after the Christmas period for them to go into. Even if they give her the contract till the end of the season, I don't know why they wouldn't just nail it down and go, unless they know something that none of us know and there's somebody out there that is taking the role. But as I say, when I look at the experience of the women's game and the coaches that are out there currently, I don't know who would come in and do a better job without shifting the whole environment again and making it uncomfortable potentially.
Yeah, and I just think, whoever's going to come in is going to potentially be starting from scratch in a different way because they might have a different vision,
for sure,
philosophy, players they want to be at the club, don't want to be at the club. And then there's still an unknown for the team and for the club as to what direction and how quickly they're going to get the success they want. But I think right now they've got clearly a great foundation to build upon. So why not just support that, invest in it and see where it goes?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I'd like to hear from the Arsenal women's fans. They know that their fan base is huge out there. What do you think? Should Renée Slegers be given the job or should they be looking somewhere else after Christmas? We'd like to hear from you. But Neat, on another note, we have to talk about Khadija Bunny Shaw, right? Let me just go through a few stats. Bunny Shaw, WSL moments, right? 2022-23, she scored 31 goals in 30 games for Manchester City. In 23-24, she scored 21 goals in 18 games. And now this season so far has scored 14 goals in 14 games. That was 2 at the weekend again against Leicester. What can we say about her as a striker in terms of how much she's improved in recent seasons and improved to the levels that we could start talking about her in that world-class striker bracket soon?
Prolific goal scorer is what springs to mind straight away. Yeah. Because to come in, score that many goals season upon season and have immediate impact to the point that when she's not playing, it's noticeable that they're missing a key player for them. I think she's a phenomenal player on the pitch and also a massive role model off it. But yeah, I think she's definitely, building up those numbers that are going to put her up in that world-class bracket because she's a proper finisher, all-rounder.
All-rounder. I think that is it, isn't it? I mean, she could score with her left foot, right foot. She scores headers. Do you know what I mean? She's a striker an old school striker that we don't really see that often anymore. When balls are put in the box, she's a handful. You could put it into her, punch it into her feet. She can hold up and bring her teammates in. She's really that old school striker. You know what impressed me most about her? Obviously, she was competing with Ellen White at the time when she first joined Manchester City and didn't get that many minutes. And then had to fill the boots of Ellen White, who, record in terms of goals speaks for itself. The way she went about doing that, and, there was rumours that she was working closely with Shaun Goater, the former Manchester City striker, legend of the club. How important do you think that relationship and doing that one-to-one with him has improved her and helped her?
Yeah, I think, Shaun Goater is a legend at the club, and I think he would have, shared a lot of his own knowledge and experience and all the coaching lessons that he's had throughout his career to support her. And I think having that relationship between the two of them probably was like a nice transition with Ellen leaving, retiring and her stepping into those shoes. And just having that person that backs you.
Yeah.
You
what, you look like a proud dad in the crowd. When she started to go on that run of goals and getting that consistent, and every time the cameras would zoom in on Shaun, because obviously there was that kind of conversation, she's doing extra work. And he just was like smiling away as if to go, yep, we've worked on that. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you ever saw the clips, like when she first started scoring. I'm not sure he's there now, but when she first started scoring, you always would zoom in on him as if to say, look, this partnership in terms of what they've done.
I mean, it's fantastic that they've been able to cultivate that kind of relationship and that dynamic where he is in the stands and he's proud and he's going, this is paying off. Yeah. But also for her, that she sees the rewards for all the input that she's getting from him and all the effort that she's putting in herself, I think is massive. And also just like the one-to-one contact that as players you don't always get with coaches, to know that they're really investing time analysing things about your game that you can improve on. I think you can see that on the pitch, and she is one of those forwards that I've said many times, I'm so glad I'm retired.
I was gonna
because I've played against her a couple of times and I probably still have some trauma based on the results, number one, that we had against City when I played for Villa, but also just the type of player she is. She's powerful. She can, stretch the game, running behind. She can hold up play. She's not afraid of that physical contact. And you're thinking, it's going to be a long afternoon when you're going up against
I was
Bunny.
actually going to ask you on that, how you defend against her. But you know what? Before I do ask that, what impresses me about her is that, when players do well and have a good season, and she did, I mentioned there in her first season, 31 goals in 30 games, you can stand still. You can go, actually, I've proved I can score goals. I don't need to do any more. This is who I am. The fact that she continues to want to work at her game, improve herself in areas that will make her even better, and then keep those consistent numbers. That's impressive. How many players do you see has a good season and dips off for a couple and stands still? There's a lot of players that we see do that. The fact that her numbers are just getting better and better year on year. But you know what? So let me ask you, how do you defend that first? And then
I think...
Because I'm glad I'm not shielding in front anymore.
I was going to say, get you in front to screen. No, but I think I watched it, obviously, some of their game this weekend, and she's a difficult player to mark because she is so good at finding, just half a yard of space and being a threat in and around the box or outside the box when she's linking up play. She can draw you into areas you don't want to go into as a centre-back. So I think number one, you've got to be up for the physical challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you cannot allow her to just sort of out-muscle you in situations. You've got to be up for that. But you've also got to be willing to sort of block runs when you can.
I hated being a blocker.
Yeah.
That was one thing in the game I hated.
From set piece situations or crosses, it's a horrible role sometimes, but you've just got to be willing to be up for the challenge and know that you might not be able to out-jump Bunny Shaw because she's an absolute unit, right? Yeah. And so good in the air, but you've got to do enough to just put her off balance, just make it uncomfortable for her. And having watched some of their game, like I said, this weekend against Leicester, I think if you can't stop Bunny in the box because you can't...
Stop the supply.
You've got to stop the supply. And neither was happening. To my frustration, I was like, do one of the things. You might not be able to do that bit, but stop the cross or double up on the wide players, but don't get hurt in both areas.
So true.
Especially if you're playing they had back five at times. You got, and it's literally two players in the box for Man City, and they're not stopping it. I mean, I'd rather them commit some fouls, even to some degree, just to break up the play, break up the game a little bit. But credit to her, really, that she's the handful, that she's so motivated and driven to be better than she was in every game. You see when she misses a chance, her body language, how frustrated she is. Just shows.
Well, we saw that in the Chelsea game, didn't we? A few weeks back when they lost 2-0, and how frustrated she was after missing that first. that kind of played on her mind, I felt, in that game. Probably the only game I've seen it really affect her over the 90 minutes. What would you say her biggest strength is then as a striker? What's her main attribute? You know me, I love the fact that, as you say, a player in a box, to deal with her from crosses, I don't think there's a defender out there currently that can deal with her if you put balls in a box to her.
Yeah, I think she has quite a few super strengths, if you like, but I think one of them is her prowess in the box, in box situations, just because a lot of Man City supply comes from wide areas. They're always looking for those intricate low cutbacks and that kind of play. I think that's one of her super strengths. The other super strength is she is okay with being responsible, like taking responsibility, being the focal point and being like, I'm the one that's going to make something happen. Yeah. I'm the one who's going to take this chance on. And that's the quality in her. Like, she sees a goal, she's going, I'm going to have a shot. Yeah. I'm going to take a chance. And you've got to have a bit of that, don't you? Self-belief.
100%. And she's got that, and in abundance. Do you know what I mean? And as you say, she is that player that is prepared to take the responsibility for the team in all areas and kind of drive them on in that final third. Do you think then, because I'm sitting here thinking, we just spoke about her numbers over the last 3 seasons or 2.5 seasons. Do you think she gets the credit she deserves, or are we starting to see people talk about her a little bit more now? Do you think it's took a while to get there? And what's taken it so long? Because when you perform consistently like that, if that was an English player, in my opinion, that had performed consistently like that over the 2.5 year period that she has, she would have been plastered over everything and spoken about Ballon d'Or or whatever else. We could talk about all these, the FIFA best and, PFA player of the year. She just doesn't get a look in or the recognition for actually what her numbers are delivering year on year.
Yeah, I think she doesn't get the hype that she deserves. Why? And I'm not sure why. I think it's partly...
This is going to sound, I don't know, bad maybe for Manchester City fans. Does she need to be at a bigger club? And what I mean by bigger, in terms of a bigger women's club that compete year on year in the Champions League to the latter stages to be recognised.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think when you are in the big competitions, the European Champions League, reaching the latter stages and finals, then you are spotlighted more. And then you're on the global map where football fans across the world are also seeing you and having a bit more of a keen interest in your career, what you're doing at club. So that might be part of it. I think internationally too, Jamaica in recent times have shown that they can compete on the big stage. They're improving all the time, but they're not in the top sort of 5 FIFA, ranked teams. So if you're not making the big competitions and again in finals, semi-finals, that might have a part to do with it. But I think if you're looking specifically at the WSL and what she's delivering season upon season, to the point that I think every team out there is going, match day -1 when they're going on opposition, who you're going to meet. She's a key player. Stop her. Yeah. That signifies the kind of player that we have on our hands. And for me, she's a world-class forward at the moment domestically. But I don't know if it's also a bit of like, are we giving her enough of the platform to tell her story? I mean, that's generally across the media, across their own club. Why are they not screaming? Why are we not screaming and shouting about her
of course.
more, so that she can share her journey and who she is and her numbers to the scale that we would see. I think, like you said, English players or Lionesses or whatever in the same category.
So are you? Because I'm surprised that a big club in Europe, I'm talking Champions League teams that compete, the likes of Bar, have never come in for her. Why do you think that is? Do you think... I mean, I recently did a Fara Meets with Lucy Bronze and maybe hearing what Lucy told me about Barca's structure in terms of you kind of have to fit into their style. Maybe that's a reason Bonnie probably don't get that attraction from there. Maybe financially, cost. But why do we not hit... We heard in the summer, you heard a couple of years ago, Russo, Arsenal wanting at the time or prepared to spend big money to bring her from Man United to Arsenal. You hear every summer other names being spoken about from big clubs moving, and we've never heard her name within that. That baffles me. I'm talking Wolfsburg, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, I don't know, all these top teams, Chelsea even.
I think it's a really good question that you pose, Faz. I just wonder if it's like clubs out there are thinking, we can't go after her because she's Man City. Like, they, synonymously, they're like, the same thing. You know, they
Yeah.
can't. It's not City without Bunny Shaw, or if, as we said, because her profile doesn't get the same kind of recognition on on a wider scale, that people just don't pay enough attention to what she's doing and her numbers specifically, and fitting and maybe not fitting the playing style or the mold. I'm not really sure. I find
it's baffling. I'm just like, what does she need to do? What does she need to do in order to get that move? It's a crazy one, because when you think, Neat, right, about the top WSL strikers. Now, if we talk currently, you could talk Ramirez, Sam Kerr before injury, Miedema before injury, Russo, for example, Ellen White in her time, Rachel Daly a couple of seasons ago, Tony Duggan, Eniola, Leanne Sutton, all of these names. Where does she sit in terms of like WSL top striker?
Oh,
because she's right up there.
She's right up the top.
And we're talking WSL for those long, women's fans that have been there before in the Premier League. We're talking strictly WSL, right? So we're not talking the Judy Fleetings, the Rachel Yankees, the Kaz Walker. We're talking strictly WSL, so don't get offended. But when you think about those players that I've just mentioned, she has to be right up there in terms of numbers.
She's
as one of, if not the best, I would argue. I mean, I'd always argue Viv
easily,
because and her numbers, they're close. Viv and Viv Miedema and Bonnie Shaw. But outside of that, and I'm talking, we've just said some top names there.
Oh, 100%. I for me, she's up there in the top.
Look, it's been 3 seasons, so we have to also take that into consideration, because the likes of Eni did it year on year, and Leanne did it, and Tony.
But she's still got so much room, numbers, hasn't she, to keep developing. Like, she's still quite relatively young player. Like, and these are her numbers, and this is what she's doing now. So you can almost look ahead to the future and go, well, if she's producing this now, surely she's only going to get better and better and better as time goes on. She's in there in the top 3 easily. Yeah. For me, because of what the impact she has. And to be honest, like, throughout my playing career, there's not many, I think, female players that are that exceptional in the box situations, like from crossing situations and aerially. Like, Sam Kerr definitely is up there, with her. And obviously in the past, there's some international players. Miedema's up there as well. Before injury,
she had that season, didn't she, when she played number 9?
Yeah.
For Arsenal. I mean, we know we've seen her float between 9 and 10, but when she's played the 9, that season she had, I can't remember how many goals Miedema hit, but she had a phenomenal, she hit a phenomenal season in terms of goals. But
all-rounder. Yeah. I think Bunny is an all-rounder.
Striker. She's just an old-school striker. As I say, she could be a target player, scores from box, edge of the box, scores inside the box, scores from crosses, set pieces, scores from. So if we was to rank her, let's do 2 rankings. Let's do a ranking of.
Now we're on the spot.
Maybe a top 5 WSL ranking in terms of strikers, and then we'll do a current WSL top 5.
Okay.
So, in fact, we'll do the current first because it's more fresh in my mind. Let's do. So, if we used to rank the top strikers now currently in the WSL, what's your ranking? We can have a couple of minutes. I think I'd go. I think Bunny Shaw's number 1. Bunny has to be number 1.
I agree. I think Bunny.
I think in terms of, I think Ramirez currently would probably have to be sitting 2 probably alongside maybe Russo in 3.
Yeah, I'd say that too. I would say Ramirez.
I would say you've got Keats.
Turland,
I think Nikita, I know she plays out on the right, but I think in terms of goals currently, Nikita's probably sits in that top 5.
Currently, yeah, I've put her in there. I think I'd put Turland in there.
Turland, I was thinking Turland
as well. I think she's having. I was a doubter at Man United ahead of the season, and she's having massive impact. She's scoring goals, she's assisting. Like, she
has to be in there, hasn't she? So what are we saying? We're going. We've got to go Bunny Shaw 1. I would probably say Ramirez 2 in terms of rounded performance. Maybe more goals for her. Would Russo or Turland? Russo. I think Russo's coming to form.
Yeah, I'd still probably go Russo because of her all-round game as well. Yeah. Turland, Nikita Paris.
Nikita, basically.
Nikita Paris.
Now, all right, so that'll be our current. What about WSL top
all
5?
Time?
So WSL top 5. You know what? Maybe you call me biased, whatever.
Viv Miedema's in there.
In terms of numbers, you have to go Viv, right?
Yeah, I think sheer numbers.
In terms of
breaking the record.
Kelly Smith didn't play as long in the WSL at her best in terms of age. When you think of the age that the kind of WSL, Kelly Smith has to be in there.
1000%.
It's like, yeah, Kelly Smith has to be in there. Ellen White has to be in there.
Ellen White, absolutely.
Goals. So we've got Ellen White. I'm not going to rank them because I think these players, it'll be naughty to rank them. Yeah, it'll be naughty to rank them. So Bunny Shaw has to be there.
Yeah, Bunny's in there.
Medium has to be there.
Yeah,
Kelly Smith has to be there. Ellen White has to be there. And we've got one more slot. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Beth Mead, who over the years has been, even when she was at Sunderland before that.
You got Beth Mead, you've got...
Well, Tony Duggan. You've got
Rachel Williams.
Rachel Williams, I forgot a little bit about her.
Eniola.
Leanne Sanderson. Right, we've got to throw one in. Who are you
going with?
This is difficult.
Who you going with?
It depends, because Leanne was probably more of a 10, wasn't she?
Yeah.
So probably Leanne, if we're talking 10, she's definitely up there with the 10s over the years in 100%. WSL. It's a difficult one.
It's hard as well, because you're trying to think back to a time, when all these players
Tony scored goals as well, didn't she? Tony Duggan.
Banging in goals.
She played more out wide. Let me think, number 9s.
I think you've got to put any in there, haven't you?
Any, yeah. You've got to, haven't you?
I think you've got to put any in there.
In terms of what she did, for sure.
In terms of what she's done at a club level, international level.
Any, you make the cut. You made the cut 5, and you made our jungle where we wanted you in the jungle too. So you're getting a bit of a hype on our show. So that'll be our top 5. Guys, let us know what you think. Who is in the top 5 WSL players currently? And who is your top 5 WSL of all time? And we're talking strikers only here. But Neat, let's just move on to the relegation. So we spoke a bit about goals, but let's talk about relegation. You was at the Crystal Palace game this weekend with Grace Williams, head of Crystal Palace women's team. Heard you speak to her a little bit at half time. In terms of that transition from WSL 2 or Championship into the WSL, what was she saying about the differences and how hard they found that transition and kind of what they expect of their team? Because they are in a relegation battle. They're sitting bottom of the table, level points with Leicester. And then we'll talk about in a minute the teams around them. We've got Aston Villa and Everton, just only a point outside of that. And obviously West Ham 2 points outside of that. So what was she giving you in terms of the expectation of the club? Yeah,
I think Grace was really honest. I know Grace Williams actually from my time at Bristol City, where she was our general manager. So she already has experience of being at a newly promoted team and kind of what it takes in all the processes in terms of recruitment, staff, all of that. And, a realistic or a goal for the club is to try and stay up in the WSL because they want to have that foundation to build upon into the, next season and into the future. She's very honest about the challenges in terms of the transition for players who are also, some of them have come from the Championship now at this level to try and compete and those fine margins like, mistakes and errors.
Get punished.
That you get punished more at this level. So she talks a bit about that. She talked about the fact that, they obviously will have to look and continue to look at potential signings in the future to keep strengthening their squad. And looking at the areas that they can sort of do that as well. And just in general, I think just the kind of adaptation of learning that they have to continue to do game by game, also acknowledging that they have sort of shown that they can compete and they are performing in some, moments of games and doing really well with that, but they can't kind of take their foot off the gas and allow teams to get them back in and really capitalize on those opportunities and moments. So that was disappointing from her perspective in that West Ham game.
Do they need to adapt their style a little bit to be able to compete, or not even compete? Because I feel like, as you mentioned, in moments they compete with their style of play and they look very good in moments. But in other areas they look very vulnerable. When you look at the goals they conceded yesterday, 5. I mean, the defending, I don't want to scratch over that. But do they need to adapt their style in order for them to stay in the league?
I think, I don't know if they have to adapt their style in terms of, because I've also played in a club that was newly promoted and we could, we struggled at times to break into the final third and create opportunities and score goals, which is always difficult. Yeah. But this is actually a team that has shown they can score goals. They can exploit opposition and get into the right areas with the way they're playing. I think it's more about being more pragmatic in situations where they can limit transition, stop turning over balls
in the women's game generally.
They're turning over balls in areas in quite a naive fashion at times. Does that mean square balls in the midfield across and then oppositions on them, and leaving themselves defensively exposed because they're just committing numbers and forgetting about like the rest defense.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think if they can just tweak those two things as a sort of priority, don't want to stop them going forward and creating opportunities. Got to be clinical, got to take their opportunities, but defensively, don't be naive and just think we're all in attack now, can switch off. Think about what ifs.
Yeah,
I think that they have a chance to compete around, especially the teams in and around them, because they've shown enough, good things.
So let's talk about the teams in and around. You've got Leicester, Everton, and I say Villa. I would put probably West Ham within that bracket as well. So those 5 teams there. Do you think then Palace have enough to escape relegation? Or do you think the experience of the teams we just mentioned, Everton, Leicester, Villa and West Ham, the experience of playing in the WSL, they have an advantage over Palace?
I think the other clubs do have an advantage because of the experience of the WSL and even the experience of lingering at the bottom. Like West Ham have experienced that. Leicester. Leicester have experienced that. Everton have experienced that. So they kind of built the kind of resilience to suffer, I think, and mentally for some of those players who have experienced relegation battles more than one season.
Yeah. Well, especially, and Palace have come up from winning. So they've been used to winning, and now they've got to kind of accept that actually those winning moments are few and far between now in the WSL. So then that whole mindset and
that mindset shift
from, we won pretty much all of our games in the Championship. We had a good season that really were now on a really big high, and now actually we're being brought back down a little bit in the WSL, and that kind of mental shift for those players. How difficult is that? How was it for you guys at Bristol coming up, and then obviously winning and playing and performing well, to then similar performances but obviously not getting results and fighting down at the bottom?
It's really tough, and I think you rightly say, it's more the mental part of it, not necessarily the physical, tactical, whatever, technical. It's the mental. How do you find that motivation, resilience day in, day out when you show up to training that you're building for these games and the results aren't coming, but you think you're performing well or you're doing things quite well, and you're not seeing the outcomes. That for me is the toughest part. And then there's the actual reality when you get to the point, and I'm not saying, I think it's still a long way for them to go. So we're not saying they're in this deep dive relegation battle right now, but that, if they get to the point where it's the crunch end of the season and you're at the bottom and you're struggling, the reality of knowing potentially people lose their jobs. Like, this is football, people lose their jobs because suddenly you're results-based business, budgets, things like that. And that stuff plays in your mind. Like, as a manager, as a player, it can bring a level of stress to your life that you do not need. Nobody needs it, And I know when I was in a relegation battle, I was going home complaining to, my wife every day, like, oh, man, today sucked. Like, I just don't know how I'm going to dig myself out of this hole, again, let alone the team. But we got to go again. We got to fight again. And often it wasn't just the result. It was the manner of some of those defeats, like fighting to stay in a game and then added time, 5 minutes, conceding a goal. And you're thinking, like, what have we done to deserve this?
That is true.
So it's having that kind of resilience in your mindset and sticking together as a group. You got to maintain positivity. You got to have those leaders in the group that just keep everyone like focused on the goal.
The goal, for sure. I wouldn't want to right now. I mean, as I say, there's a win in it, isn't there? One win can move you off the bottom, and one defeat can put you at the bottom. But as I mentioned, those 5 teams: Palace, Leicester, Everton, Villa, and West Ham. I would argue right now, going into the Christmas break, we have one game next weekend. They are the teams that will be fighting the relegation zone. But again, I mean, I'm not sure you want to put your neck on the line and say who you think might go down.
No, I don't know.
I'm not convinced at this moment. I'm sure about who's going to go down. So I don't want to.
I think it could go right to the wire, end of the season. Towards the end of the season, and I think if anything, there are the clubs there that you mentioned that know they're going to be or are in a sort of relegation battle. But I think what I was going to ask you in terms of like Villa,
Yeah.
for example.
We have a fan's question on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do they, how they must be feeling right now? Because that would never have entered, I don't think, their expectation going into this season.
No way. Given the last couple of seasons, 2 seasons ago, I think a top 5 or top 6, wasn't it? And then last season, a little bit, the expectation was higher. They didn't quite achieve that. Obviously, Carla Ward left the club. But I don't know. When I look on paper at the players they've brought in, and then I look on paper every single week in terms of the 11 always change. They don't have a consistent 11. For some reason, Kenza Darley, who was a key player in that team, doesn't get the minutes I think she should be getting.
Yeah.
There's a few things. Does he know his consistent 11? I'm not sure he does. I think if he does, he needs to start playing it more regularly. We've seen that with Arsenal now. They started to play a more consistent 11. You build those relationships, those connections, and results come with that. You know what I mean? You kind of know where you are as a player. As a player, you 1 week you're in, you think you've done well, the next week you're not playing. It's not for a tactical reason. It's because I'm going to give some.
Yeah.
He needs to be more consistent in terms of team selection. On paper, their team should not be where it is in the league. They should not be they're 2 points. Sorry, they're where are they? They are 2 points. 1 point. They're 1 point off
the bottom. Yeah.
The bottom. Palace are on 5 points, and and Villa are on 6 points. So they're 1 point off. They should not be in that position right now. Not given the amount of investment they had in the summer as well. The players that they brought into that club. So, I mean, Aston Villa fans, they have every right to be disappointed in how they've been performing this year. And they have every right to have those question marks around whether it be managers or player that aren't performing. But they certainly shouldn't be in the position they are at this stage of the season, given what they spent. And given the opening game against Chelsea on the Friday night, the opening game of the season, they lose 1-0, a really positive second half. Looked like they were a team that was really going to go on and maybe deliver something this year, and just have failed to do that. So, I don't know, but I'm not prepared to put my neck on the line and say a relegation just yet. Come back to me in February and I'll give you one. But we would like to know from the fans, do you think your team's in a relegation or not? Nietzsche, you've pretty much asked one of the questions of our fans' question, and that was, is Robert De Paul's time up at Villa halfway through the season? No consistency in the starting 11. I mean, I would just say we can't just keep sacking managers for nothing. No, I'm saying nothing. That's stupid. It is something. They're not getting results, and they're paid to get results. So, should they look at him? Probably. Has he had enough time? We're looking 3 months into the season. I don't think he's had enough time. But I also haven't seen much change. And so, for those reasons, it wouldn't surprise me if they kept him, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they got rid of him.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And it's contradictory, I get. I'm looking if there's another manager out there. Casey Stoney would be probably a really nice fit for Aston Villa if they were looking to replace him. But something has to change. And given the fact he's changed his team that many times, I partly think it's his problem. But also, when you have that calibre of player, at some point players have to take responsibility.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, Aston Villa as a club, if they have someone in mind that potentially to come in, then
Carla Ward's also ready to come back. I heard her say the other day on Sky she's ready to come back into management. I'm not sure she'd want to go back there though.
then the change could happen either way. It might not, but I think they really need to assess kind of what it is that isn't getting them the results that they should be getting. Because
you look at their attack, how many players they've got in attack.
And you look at some of their performances, like they're having moments in games, spells, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes where they do really well. And then it just all falls apart somehow. And so I'm also wondering, like, is it the psychology within the team, like the mentality to sort of ride out those difficult moments in the season and in the games and in the culture as a whole? Like, are they holding each other to certain standards and accountability? Because that could be part of it. We will never know. We're not in.
And they've got some senior internationals, and they've got bags of experience in there, moulded with a bit of youth. I don't know. I mean, if I was a Villa fan, I wouldn't be happy in terms of league position and amount of games that they've won. I think they've not won in the last 5.
Yeah, which is.
They won what they did. They won the weekend before the international break. I'm lying.
The other one game, yeah. But it's. you can't I mean, they scraped by with a win against Crystal Palace.
That's what I mean.
Ebony Salmon came on and
late,
scored in added time. That was a sort of last roll at the dice. Let's see.
They threw on like 3 or 4 strikers.
Let's hope something happens. That's not, we have this game plan that we are solid in and we take control and we're going to win the game. So that's a bit of a concern. It's great that they managed to find a way, but this team, with the players they have, the caliber of players, they should be able to deliver more than they are at the minute.
Yeah, well, that's our opinion on Aston Villa for now. One more question, Neats, before we give our weekend's predictions, our final weekend predictions of this year. Do you feel there's more options after retirement now than there was before?
Yeah, I do. I think there are. I think that we have greater awareness of what opportunities exist within the landscape of football. I think once upon a time, we would retire. We think we can only go into coaching potentially. You know, now obviously there's opportunities across media, whether it's pundits, commentators, you know, presenting to also work within this space. But not just that, I think there are, you know, like MIP courses now for sport management to go on the executive level, to work behind the scenes.
Social media
content. There's a whole variety of jobs that, at least from my traditional education, I never knew existed because you were literally told, like, do you want to be a police officer? Do you want to be a nurse? Do you want to be in the fire service? Like, that's the kind of you know, education we got in terms of what job opportunities were out there when you leave school. So I think and there's a greater, I mean, you'd probably agree with this. I think clubs are trying to prepare players a bit better for transition. Would you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly, if clubs aren't, I know the PFA are doing a little bit more and other sponsors around that. I think it's important. I think it's certainly important for the younger players to be educated alongside playing in the early stages of their career, so they have an option after. But then obviously, you know, as you build through your career, know that there are options and people that are going to help and assist with those options, so that when you come out of the game, you know, you have something there or thereabouts to go into. Because we know as female footballers, currently, you're not going to retire where you retire from the game and you can put your feet up for a couple of years. Some, yes, but definitely not all. So definitely it's important that, definitely not. That's why we're here today. No, but definitely I think it's important that these players have a pathway after the game and they start that kind of journey into retirement earlier than what we did. I retired and then thought, oh, what am I going to do next? so definitely not leaving it that late. But yeah, they were great questions, guys. Thanks for sending those in. But Neat, let's go to our quick fire results and who we think is going to get the win over the weekend. We like this one. We still haven't got a betting sponsor yet, which I wouldn't mind one, considering our accumulators are not bad. But there's some Saturday games. Saturday the 14th of December. We have 2 games that weekend. Leicester, Chelsea. I mean, the Invincibles, Chelsea, I'm going with.
True Blue, go on.
I'm going with Chelsea away win.
Yeah, Chelsea win for me.
Then we've got Saturday, 14th of December, Brighton at home to Tottenham. Ooh, this is a tricky one.
I'm going to say Brighton. I'm going to back Brighton.
Yeah, I think
to be fair, I mean, I've seen enough.
They pushed Chelsea a bit at the weekend. 4-2 they lost, but they pushed them. Sunday the 15th, and these are the last games of the WSL for the calendar of 2024. Everton at home to Manchester City. I'm going to say Man City win.
I'm going to say a Man City win as well.
Palace at home to Man United. I'm going to go Man United win.
Yeah, United win as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. Now, this is a tricky one. Aston Villa against West Ham. Now, Aston Villa, we just mentioned the form they're in isn't great. West Ham got a massive win at the weekend.
I think this is a spicy game. Can't wait to see this one.
I'm going to say draw.
You're going to say a draw?
I've never said a draw in my predictions.
You know what? I hope it's another dramatic game like the one I've witnessed this weekend.
And who are you going with?
But I'm going to say a Villa win.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the final game is Liverpool at home to Arsenal. Now, we just spoke about the form of Arsenal.
I think it's an Arsenal win.
But I would say an Arsenal win, but I'd also argue that easy. Liverpool getting battered by United 4-0 at the weekend, Matt Beard will not be happy. And something's going to change in this game against Arsenal. But, we will see. Liverpool turn up against big teams.
Liverpool will definitely turn up.
Plan. But I'm going to go with you. I'm going to agree, and I'm going to say an Arsenal win.
Yeah, I think an Arsenal win, but I think it will be a difficult game.
Yeah, it will be. Guys, that is our predictions for the weekend. If you want to use our predictions and you've got £1 spare and you want to put an accumulator on, go ahead and do it. Not that I'm encouraging any betting, by the way. But guys, thanks for listening to BBB. If you like, obviously press the like button, comment and subscribe, and we'll be back next week.